Hello, good listeners. Welcome back to Literate. In this video, we will be continuing our book Why I Am An Atheist by Bhagat Singh. This is the 10th chapter named When Sukhdev Thought of Suicide. In 1930, Sukhdev wrote a letter to Bhagat Singh mentioning that he would be willing to kill himself if he was sentenced to life imprisonment instead of execution. This was Bhagat Singh's response to it. Please subscribe to the channel for free audiobooks. Hit like button and do leave your feedback in comment section. I suggest you to use headphones for better experience. Here we begin the essay. Dear brother, I have gone through your letter attentively and many times. I realize that the changed situation has affected us differently. The things you hated outside have now become essential to you. In the same way, the things I used to support strongly are of no significance to me anymore. For example, I believed in personal love, but now this feeling has ceased to occupy any particular position in my heart and mind. While outside, you were strongly opposed to it, but now a drastic change and radicalization is apparent in your ideas about it. You experience it as an extremely essential part of human existence, and you have found a particular kind of happiness in the experience. You may still recollect that one day I had discussed suicide with you. That time I told you that in some situations, suicide may be justifiable, but you contested my point. I vividly remember the time and place of our conversation. We talked about this in Sahanshahi Kutia one evening. You said in jest that such a cowardly act can never be justified. You said that acts of this kind were horrible and heinous, but I see that you have now made an about turn on this subject. Now you find it not only proper in certain situations, but also necessary, even essential. My opinion is what you had held earlier, that suicide is a heinous crime. It is an act of complete cowardice. Leave alone revolutionaries, no individual can ever justify such an act. You say you fail to understand how suffering alone can serve the country. Such a question from a person like you is really perplexing, because how thoughtfully we loved the motto of No Jawan Bharat Sabha, to suffer and sacrifice through service. I believe that you served as much as was possible. Now is the time when you should suffer for what you did. Another point is that this is exactly the moment when you have to lead the entire people. Man acts only when he is sure of his justness of his action, as we threw the bomb in Legislative Assembly. After the action, it is the time for bearing the consequences of the act. Do you think that had we tried to avoid the punishment by pleading for mercy, we would have been more justified? No. This would have had an adverse effect on the masses. We are now quite successful in our endeavor. At the time of our imprisonment, the conditions for the political prisoners of our party were very miserable. We tried to improve that. I told you quite seriously that we believed we would die very shortly. Neither we were aware of the technique of forced feeding, nor did we ever think of it. We were ready to die. Do you mean to say that we were intending to commit suicide? No. Striving and sacrificing one's life for a superior ideal can never be called suicide. We are envious of the death of our comrade Yatindranath Das. Will you call it suicide? Ultimately, our sufferings bore fruit. A big movement started in the whole of the country. We were successful in our aim. Death in the struggles of this kind is an ideal death. Apart from this, the comrades among us who believe that they will be awarded death should await that day patiently when the sentence will be announced and they will be hanged. This death will also be beautiful, but committing suicide to cut short the life just to avoid some pain is cowardice. I want to tell you that obstacle makes a man perfect. Neither you nor I, rather none of us, have suffered any pain so far. That part of our life has started only now. You will recollect that we have talked several times about realism in Russian literature, which is nowhere visible in our own. We highly appreciate the situation of pain in their stories, but we do not feel that spirit of suffering within ourselves. We also admire their passion and extraordinary height of their characters, but we never bother to find out the reason. I will say that only the reference to their resolve to bear pain has produced the intensity, the suffering of pain, and this has given great depth and height to their characters and literature. We become pitiable and ridiculous when we imbibe an unreasoned mysticism in our life without any natural or substantial basis. People like us, who are proud to be revolutionary in every sense, should always be prepared to bear all the difficulties, anxieties, pain, and suffering which we invite upon ourselves by the struggles initiated by us and for which we call ourselves revolutionary. I want to tell you that in jail, and in jail alone, can a person get an occasion to study empirically the great social subjects of crime and sin. I have read some literature on this, and only the jail is the proper place for self-study on all these topics. The best parts of the self-study for one is to suffer oneself. You know it that the suffering of political prisoners in the jails of Russia caused, in the main, the revolution in the prison administration after the overthrow of Caesardom. Is India not in need of such persons who are fully aware of this problem and have personal experience of these things? It will not suffice to say that someone else would do it, or that many other people are there to do it. Thus, men who find it quite dishonorable and hateful to leave the revolutionary responsibilities to others should start their struggle against the existing system with total devotion. They should violate these rules, but they should also keep in mind the propriety, because unnecessary and improper attempts can never be considered just. Such agitation will shorten the process of revolution. All the arguments which you give to keep yourself aloof from all such movement are incomprehensible to me. Some of our friends are either fools or ignorant. They find your behavior quite strange and incomprehensible. They themselves say that they cannot comprehend to it because you are above and very far from their understanding. In fact, if you feel that jail life is really humiliating, why don't you try to improve it by agitating? Perhaps you will say that this struggle would be futile, but this is precisely the argument which is usually used as a cover by weak people to avoid participation in every movement. This is the reply which we kept on hearing outside the jail from the people who were anxious to escape from getting entangled in revolutionary movements. Shall I now hear the same argument from you? What could our party of a handful of people do in comparison to the vastness of its aims and ideals? Shall we infer from this that we erred gravely in starting our work altogether? No. Inferences of this kind will be improper. This only shows the inner weakness of men who thinks like this. You write further that it cannot be expected of a man that he will have the same thinking after going through 14 years long of suffering in prison, which he had before, because the jail life will crush all his ideas. May I ask you whether the situation outside the jail was any bit more favorable to our ideas? Even then, could we have left it because of our failures? Do you mean to imply that had we not entered the field, no revolutionary work would have taken place at all? If this be your contention, then you are mistaken, though it is right that we also proved helpful to an extent in changing the environment, but we are only product of needs of our time. I shall even say that Marx, the father of communism, did not actually originate this idea. The Industrial Revolution of Europe itself produced men of this kind. Marx was among them. Of course, Marx was also instrumental to an extent in gearing up the wheels of his time in a particular field. I, and you too, did not give birth to the ideas of socialism and communism in this country. This is the consequence of the effects of our time and situations upon ourselves. Of course, we did a bit to propagate these ideas, and therefore I say that since we have already taken a tough task upon ourselves, we should continue to advance it. The people will not be guided by our committing suicides to escape the difficulties. On the contrary, this will be quite a reactionary step. We continued our work despite the testing environment of disappointments, pressures, and violence ordained by the jail rules. While we worked, we were made target of many kind of difficulties. Even men who were proud to proclaim themselves to be great revolutionaries deserted us. Were these conditions not testing in the extreme? Then what was the reason and logic of continuing our agitation and efforts? Does this simple argument not by itself give added strength to our ideas? And don't we have instances of our revolutionary comrades who suffered from their convictions in jail and still working on return from jails? Had Bakunin argued like you, he would have committed suicide right in the beginning. Today you find many revolutionaries occupying responsible posts in the Russian state who had passed the greater part of their lives in prison, completing their sentences. Man must try hard to stick to his beliefs. No one can say what future has in store. Do you remember when we were discussing that some concentrated and effective poison should also be kept in our bomb factories? You opposed it very vehemently. The very idea was repugnant to you. You had no faith in it. So what has happened now? Here, even the difficult and complex conditions do not obtain. I feel revulsion even in discussing this question. You hated even that attitude of mind which permits suicide. You will kindly excuse me for saying that had you acted according to this belief right at the time of your imprisonment, you would have served the revolutionary cause, but at this moment, even the thought of such an act is harmful to our cause. There is just one more point which I would like to draw your attention to. We do not believe in God, hell and heaven, punishment and rewards. That is in any godly accounting of human life. Therefore, we must think of life and death on materialist lines. When I was brought here from Delhi for the purpose of identification, some intelligence officers talked to me on this topic in the presence of my father. They said that since I did not try to save my life by divulging secrets, it proved the presence of an acute agony in my life. They argued that a death of this kind will be something like suicide. But I had replied that a man with beliefs and ideal like mine would never think of dying uselessly. We want to get the maximum values of our lives. We want to serve humanity as much as possible. Particularly, a man like me, whose life is nowhere sad or worried, can never even think of suicide, leave alone attempting it. The same thing I want to tell you now. I hope you will permit me to tell you that what I think about myself. I am certain of capital punishment for me. I do not expect even a bit of moderation or amnesty. Even if there is amnesty, it will not be for all, and even that amnesty will be for others only, not for us. It will be extremely restricted and burdened with various conditions. For us, neither can there be any amnesty, nor will it ever happen. Even then, I wish that release calls for us should be made collection and globally. Along with that, I also wish that when the movement reaches its climax, we should be hanged. It is my wish that if at any time any honorable and fair compromise is possible, issue like our cases may never obstruct it. When the fate of the country is being decided, the fate of individuals should be forgotten. As revolutionaries, we do not believe that there can be any sudden change in the attitude of our rulers, particularly in the British race. Such a surprising change is impossible without thorough sustained striving, suffering, and sacrifices. And it shall be achieved. As far as my attitude is concerned, I can welcome facilities and amnesty for all only when its effect is permanent and some indelible impressions are made on the hearts of people of the country through our hanging. Only this much and nothing more. This was the 10th chapter of our very first book. Stay tuned for upcoming videos covering the rest of chapters. Thanks and keep listening to Literate.